Hey guys, I wanted to jump on here and talk about this case where you have a black man who sued the city of Portland for some harassment that he was facing by the Portland police. And one of the reasons why this is extremely important is because I've been talking about how, as an attempt to deal with racism, since black people are unwilling to engage in any physical altercations with, the dominant white society, which at this point, because of the high amount of coons and the fact that we've had so much submission that the whole situation is out of control. Fighting physically or getting into like some kind of war with this country, it just wouldn't be in our favor. So I've talked about some things that we could do instead that would be effective and helpful, and that's engaging in lawsuits and fighting legally. And a lot of black people believe that that isn't a method of effectively dealing with anything. Now, while I will say that won't end the system of white supremacy, if black people, not just men, were to do this on mass levels, it wouldn't necessarily break down the structure of white supremacy, but it would start hurting the economic foundation of it if black people were to do these things in mass. But you have a lot of black people who are of the mindset that there's absolutely nothing that they can do to fight back against this system. And so I wanted to go over this story because I've mentioned, these lawsuits and stories and stuff before. And I've told you guys I've had some success with them as well. And so this actually shows that you can start chipping away at the economic foundation. I just think that, unfortunately, with the mentality that we have today, we're just simply not willing to do anything. And so this story is about a black man who sued the Portland police, and they settled for $50,000. This same black man dealt with some racism in a Walmart, and he was suing them too. So it's good to see that a black man is willing to fight. But let's get into this quick story, and then I'll switch into the next story because they do kind of reference it. They do kind of reference it in here. But it says the city of Portland will pay $50,001 to settle a discrimination lawsuit filed by an African-American man who said a Portland officer showed up at his job to talk to his boss after he accused the officer of racially profiling him. So he's then retaliating and trying to get this man to lose his job. The officer has stopped the man twice within a month in the same vicinity in Southeast Portland. For me, it's not about the monetary value, said Jamal Winchester, 39, who filed the lawsuit. It's about holding people with authority accountable. Love his attitude. That's exactly what it's about. And this is surprising because Portland is full of coons, as is the entire Northwest. Usually when you see black people out there, specifically black men, they're laid up, cuddled up, and hugged up with female caveling. So it's interesting that he would have, this mentality of holding people accountable, specifically those in authority position, because that mentality is lacking in the overall global black diaspora, regardless to where they're at. They look at white people, specifically those in authority positions, as God, who are not to be held accountable. So it's good that he's actually doing it. It says the first time on May 31st, 2016, Winchester was on his way to work at the U.S. Postal Service and in uniform when Officer Gregory Byrne pulled him over near Southeast 50th Avenue and Foster Boulevard. The officer alleged Winchester had invalid registration tags and wasn't wearing his seatbelt in his 2004 GMC Envoy. Byrne wrote out a ticket and told Winchester if he fixed his tags and took a class, the ticket would be dismissed, the suit alleges. A month later, Burns again pulled Winchester over as Winchester was headed to court to have his tickets dismissed after completing a seatbelt safety class. Winchester was leaving work and driving a different car, a Cadillac Escalade, when he was stopped near Southeast 52nd Street and Bush Street on June 28th. According to the discrimination suit, as the officer approached the driver's window, Burns started laughing and said sarcastically, "What are the chances? 1 in a million." Again, Burns cited Winchester for not wearing a seatbelt and improper display of registration tags. Frustrated, Winchester remarked at the scene, "Might as well just handed me that and say have a good day," N-word, the suit says. The encounter grew more tense. The officer, who was white, yelled at Winchester for making such a comment, then said he was going to call the judge immediately and advise him not to dismiss Winchester's ticket from the month before. So, you know, the thing of it is that what a lot of people don't understand is, and if you actually do research on the demographics of both Portland and Washington, Oregon and Washington, they have a very small percentage of Black people there. However, the highest amount of tickets and the highest amount of fines are going to Black people in both these states. I looked it up for the Washington State Patrol when I got profiled by a white female officer and made a complaint on her. So the fact that he would encounter this Black man twice means that he is basing all of his stops not on whether someone's doing something, but racial profiling. He has to be in order to keep being able to pull over Black people in predominantly white areas. That's what a lot of people don't understand. And then when he called this man out on his obvious racism, which a lot of white people don't like doing, they don't like being called out on their racism, he decided to try to get vindictive in multiple different ways, saying that he wants to circumvent the law and call the judge and get him to not dismiss this ticket. So this is clearly an abuse of power in addition to racial profiling. It says at one point, Winchester, who was not in his Postal Service uniform, stepped from his car to try to talk with the officer further, but Byrne ordered him back in the car with his hands on his holster, the suit says. After both drove away, Byrne showed up at Winchester's job and asked to speak to Winchester's boss. The officer told the boss that Winchester was making the Postal Service look bad and claimed Winchester had been combative and aggressive. Now, in order for this dude to find out, for this officer to find out where this man lived at, he had to be engaging in some kind of stalking. Because I don't think that even if he told him, okay, I work for the post office, to know which post office that he worked for, that takes some investigative work. So this officer was clearly trying to be vindictive. He didn't like being called out by a Black man. He wanted to sit here and sabotage this man for calling him out on his racism. But back to the article. It said Winchester said he had driven back to his office to calm down after the second stop when he learned the officer had been circling the post office a couple times before coming in to talk to his boss. Winchester said he felt surprised, shocked, and embarrassed. By making false and defamatory statements to Winchester's employer, yelling at him and threatening to improperly influence the legal process to effectuate a stiffer penalty than Winchester would otherwise have, defendant Byrne violated Winchester's right to speak about matters of public concern. Winchester's lawyers, Ben Creighton and Michael Rose, wrote in a suit. Winchester ended up paying a $60 fine for improper display of registration tickets from the first stop and was issued a $150 fine after the second stop for both improper display of registration ticket and failure to wear a seatbelt. The city admitted that the officer made initial remarks about 1 in a million, but the officer denied laughing or saying anything in a sarcastic manner. The city also admitted the officer said he was going to contact the judge about Winchester's behavior and that Byrne went to Winchester's work. But what they're not admitting is that he had to put in some kind of detective work to find out the exact post office this man lived with or that he worked at. But the city and Byrne, a 14-year bureau veteran, acknowledged no wrongdoing in offering a settlement. Here's the thing about settlements. Whenever you settle, they're always going to not admit any wrongdoing. That's just what they do. Everybody do that. In any type of settlement, they always settle, but then say, well, we didn't do anything wrong. Winchester, through his lawyers, accepted the offer on Monday. The judgment should not be construed as an admission of liability nor an admission that the plaintiff suffered any damages. Now, they always put that in there too. That's basically a copy and paste statement. They always put those things in any settlement. Winchester said he wished the city would acknowledge its officer made a mistake by harassing him at his workplace and speaking to his boss, since Winchester was stopped in his personal vehicle and wasn't even on the job at the time of the traffic stop. This is key. But the city is not going to acknowledge that, because then they're going to make themselves liable, and then criminal stalking charges can be put on this officer, because ultimately this officer had to engage in some kind of stalking investigative behavior to even find out that this man worked for the post office. And I mean he had to engage in a lot of stuff to know exactly where he worked at. In 2017, the city's Independent Police Review Division conducted an investigation which was forwarded to Burns' boss at the time. Then traffic captain Mike Krebs exonerated the officer on allegations that he had inappropriately stopped and cited Winchester, noting that Burns was specifically looking for seatbelt violations under a special seatbelt safety grant. Krebs also did not sustain allegations that Burns acted unprofessionally during this stop or after the stop when he spoke to the motorist boss, but Krebs suggested a debriefing with the officer. Byrne was among 4 officers named in another lawsuit settled by the city in 2014 for $110,000 after a man complained the officer struck him repeatedly and tased him until he lost consciousness as he was leaving a nightclub in Old Town in 2010. And that's probably a black man as well. Now it says Winchester earlier this year filed a separate lawsuit in Multnomah County Circuit Court alleging Walmart had racially profiled him, accusing him of stealing a fishing pole that he had just bought. Now, I'm going to go show you guys that video, because what's really good is that this black man has no problem holding people accountable. He's doing exactly what I would do and what I suggest other people do, and you should do it without fear.
Is a black guy trying to buy a fishing pole at Walmart. His name is Jamal Winchester, a 38-year-old mailman and a dad trying to take his kids fishing. When he stopped by Walmart for another pole, he was confronted by several employees and accused of stealing it.
You're just going to steal it? You're a thief, you little thief. And I said, excuse me? Well, what do you mean by that? And she says, well, you come back here and I'll call security. Okay, fine.
If that's not enough, watch as the blonde female employee calls him a piece of shit, and the manager says, we'll effing deal with it.
This is proof that it does exist and it does happen.
Black people being discriminated against in this community is breathing in and breathing out.
Attorney Greg Kapori calls it shopping while black. And today he's filed several lawsuits against several corporations for false arrest and discrimination.
He approaches me and says, who has the glasses? I said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Nayazriel Salih says she was accused of stealing and detained at the Sunglass Hut in the Lloyd Center Mall. The manager reportedly chased her down at another store and brought her back to meet security when some sunglasses were missing.
And after that, he said, well, we have you on footage.
And that was not true. There was no video footage. Turns out the manager had moved the missing sunglasses when he was working on a display case.
People in Portland don't like to believe it. They like to think this is the sort of thing that happens in Chicago or LA, you know. No, it's right here.
Everybody, all the waiters and everything are looking at us. Everybody in the store is looking at us because you can tell there's some kind of situation going on with us.
Micah Huff
Same exact.
and Dwayne Fleming say it happened to them at the Red Robin out on Northwest Division. Their suit claims they came in to eat with 2 girls and were told if they wanted food, they'd have to pay the bill first.
He asked the girls what they wanted to eat, and he took their order. And then when he wanted to take ours, he was like, oh, here's how this works. You guys got to pay first.
It is relentless, and it is enormously damaging to people.
Well, in addition to those 3 cases, 2 other suits were filed, one on behalf of another African-American and one with a Filipino-American plaintiff. Keep in mind, safe to say, though, anybody can sue anyone. These cases have not been decided in court, but that said, we reached out to all these corporations, including Sunglass Hut, Red Robin, and Walmart. Late today, Walmart sent us this statement. Take a look. It reads, Walmart does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We take this situation seriously and are conducting a complete review of what occurred. We will take action as appropriate. Since this matter is now in litigation, we won't provide additional detail. We have not, meantime, heard back from any of the other companies.
Now, the really interesting thing is that I'm actually familiar with this attorney, Greg Kafori. I'm actually very familiar with him. I'm not going to tell you guys how, but I actually will be contacting him for a lawsuit that I mentioned earlier this year. So it's really interesting because it's interesting to watch this video and be reminded of this attorney. And I've been thinking about one to sue on some discrimination. So I actually will be contacting his office today. But you know, the thing of it is what a lot of people don't understand is that Portland and just the entire state of Oregon is rife with racism. I used to live there. I spoke about this before. I used to live in Portland. And so I know the level of racism they have. A lot of people seem to think that because it's on the West Coast and is liberal, then somehow that seems to mean that there is no racism, and there actually is. So the reality of it is that this is what Black people are dealing with. And unless Black people start fighting back, you're going to continue to see these instances. And I think we really do need to, we really do need to be holding them accountable. So I'm glad and happy about what this man is doing. I applaud him, and I think we need more people to do it. I will also say that Portland specifically is land of the inbred, two-teeth having, struggle gene hillbilly. And you kind of partially saw that in this video, but I want to emphasize that part specifically. Now, I'm going to end this video here because I need to contact this attorney while it's still on my mind. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks for supporting, and I'll see you in the next one.